Okay, so today we're going to have a little discussion about what True and Otz say about Hag, and why they might be unintentionally misinforming their audiences about the Hag's true potential.
Space Coconut.
There are two things I want to address: True's statement that Hag is overrated, and Otz's and the general community's insistence that the Hag is a defensive killer. The most important thing I need to mention is that they're not wrong, but the reason I'm making this video is because they're not completely right either. Now, True's primary argument that Hag is overrated is that she's easily beaten by swift groups with flashlights and survivors who know how to deal with her. This is true, but isn't it the same as any other killer? It's a common understanding that a good swift group will be able to beat any killer of equal skill. There's room for debate here for Nurse or any other killer, of course, but we'll leave that alone for now. More recently, he's been saying that she's overrated and only does well because she's the best camping killer in the game.
Yeah, I've played Hag a lot as well. The only way you play Hag in a fearful way is you just camp in like 10% of the map. You just keep going back to it.
Again, there's room for debate when talking about camping, but yes, she's probably the best camper simply because she can camp anywhere, while Bubba and Trapper usually do well in the basement. So if he's right on both points, why isn't he completely right about her being overrated? Because, like many players of Dead by Daylight, he forgets that Hag is a strategic killer and a player can choose what strategy to use and how to change that strategy depending on the game state. A player can choose to play her like a camping killer,
as her ability to proxy camp and control that area, preventing the survivors from even getting close for an unhook safely, is second to none.
or a defensive killer with a web of traps.
And I'm already going to tell you that Hag is very, very, very difficult. Now, Hag relies ultimately on her ability to defend something. She's a good defender, but she's not a great chaser just by herself, right?
The web is the most popular term you'll hear from players when talking about how to play as Hag. This isn't inaccurate either. However, the term web is itself defensive and limits the vision of a player to the idea that the Hag needs to claim an area and take out survivors when they enter that area like a spider.
Once a Hag has a perimeter of traps and someone deep inside them, getting into it without being hit immediately is very, very difficult.
However, like some spiders, you can choose to use your tools available to hunt survivors rather than push them into your web. After all, how can you camp a survivor if you don't down one in the first place?
Mission impossible? Not at all, because of her third superpower.
Space Coconut.
Is a genius. She can map her world in 3 dimensions and formulate a plan of attack. She can have an idea. The web builder is blind. It won't have a clue that she's coming. Right on target.
This idea, if you choose to break out of the defensive way of thinking, can be used proactively to hunt survivors. I'll explain how to play as an aggressive Hag in another video since I need to update the Hag guide anyway. In a much older video, Otz mentioned the fact that the Hag was unlike any other killer in the game in the fact that she's a strategic killer.
These killers play very, very differently from the rest, and as strong and unique as they are, it will be very rewarding if you get good at them, but it will set you on a path that's really, really straying from the rest. For that reason, if you are going to main Nurse or Hag, be my guest, but do stay in touch with reality, do play other killers, or you might just lose the grasp and never understand how to play killer normally.
This is 100% true, and a fact that hits me very hard whenever I try to play any other killer. True Talent is a very good M1 killer main. The majority of his tactics and ideas are rooted in how he plays an M1 killer, and in his streams, He is very proud of the fact that he plays every killer well. However, Bruce Lee once said, "I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times." While it's certainly good for content to play many different killers and roles, do you think any one person can be exceptionally good with any specific killer without an exceptional amount of practice with that killer?
The bad thing is always do it. Yep. You need to. You're not going to be able to show how good a killer is if you don't know what you're doing. Strong and high. Yeah, I don't think High's that strong. I think she's very good at camping. Remember, I don't go off what the popular narrative is. I know the popular narrative is Myers is really weak and Hag's really strong or something. I don't go off it. I only go off my own conclusions.
The Hag is a very unique killer, and is arguably the only true strategic killer in Dead by Daylight. And in True's YouTube videos, you can often hear him talking strategy and playing the Hag through the lens of an M1 killer. Now let me ask this. If True only thinks the Hag is the best camper in the game, and plays her like an M1 killer with that defensive mindset, do you think he could play her to her full potential, only casually playing with her a few times a week? If he, as an M1 killer master, couldn't do well with the Hag against certain teams, is it because the Hag isn't an S-tier killer and is simply overrated by the community? Or is it because he's simply not as good with the Hag as he is with other killers? I've heard him say before that Dead Hard is the best exhaustion perk in the game, and that players who didn't think that didn't play enough Survivor or weren't good at the game. I forget his exact words, but that's the general idea. I can repeat this exact sentiment when he says the Hag is overrated. Whether she's overrated or not is simply a matter of opinion, and I don't intend to convince him otherwise or say he's wrong. Instead, I want to ask, is it possible that the Hag isn't overrated, and True's conclusion is possibly due to the idea that he doesn't play her enough, or isn't as good with her as he is with traditional M1 killers, and lacks the skill with Hag to deal with the top % survivors? Many of us have this exact problem when we try new killers. Many of us will struggle against decent survivors if we're super good with one killer and we try to play something else. In my case, I'm an okay Hag, but an absolute garbage can Nurse. Nurse is an S-tier killer and isn't overrated by the community, but my skill with her is awful. And the fact that the Nurse is a great killer is completely dependent on my own skill with her. As for Otz, in his recent Trapper Hag video, and Otz's tier list, and Dowsy's tier list, they talk about the Hag's strength as a defensive killer. Just like True Talent, neither of them are wrong, but it's simply not the only way to think about the Hag's playstyle. Players are often stuck in this mindset because the other killers have simple, one-dimensional playstyles, and players often only think of playing the other killers in the one way that's most effective for their own playstyle. Changing your mindset is the first step in understanding that these creators aren't wrong in their statements about Hag, but they're not right either. There are many ways to play as Hag. Defensive is the most popular and the playstyle that new players will gravitate to first, but an offensive playstyle takes a bit more effort to learn and is the least expected by survivors. I'll be playing more matches to hopefully come across the various scenarios that haunt the dreams of Hag players like flashlights and those survivors that deliberately trigger your traps. When I do, I'll put together a video or two explaining how I personally deal with them. But you know, matchmaking and quality of survivors makes any of this kind of difficult, right? But until I get that going, here's a tip on how to start playing as an aggressive Hag. I want you to think about this statement and see how you could apply it to your own playstyle. Some of you already do, and I'm not saying anything new, but here you go. Use the Hag to defend against the survivor's ability to escape you in a chase. Think about that. If you like Hag gameplay and want to learn more from me, check out some of my older videos. You'd be surprised how well the strategies have held up over the years. You've chased a survivor to an untrapped loop, and they've dropped the pallet. You drop a trap. Some survivors will continue the loop and trigger the trap, assuming that you're going to teleport to it and change direction accordingly. To them, you physically exist where the trap is, and the path around the loop is clear. While they're busy focusing on the phantasm, you can move around the loop and catch them before they realize what happened.
Should've. Nice.
I look forward to hearing what you have to say in the comments below. In the meantime, I'll get that aggressive guide going, but it won't be finished anytime soon. I'm Space Coconut, and you're welcome.